Hi, welcome to Building Your Own Themyscira, a panel about networking in your niche and building community. I am very, very excited to be here today talking about making connections for business and brands and with other nerds and fans with some of my favorite people who are all over the world, actually, or all over the country, and we're all here together on this Zoom. So I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm Jordan Ellis. I run Jordan and Dené, and I'm the co-editor of the Sartorial Geek. And if you all want to introduce yourselves, Jazzlyn, you want to start?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Jazzlyn Stone. I am a freelance comic book marketer. I'm a freelance comic book marketer.
I'm a writer of plays and various other things.
I'm Robyn Warren. I founded the wellness community called Geek Girl Strong.
And I am Rose Del Vecchio, and I run a small business called FanMail.
And then I like to start with this question because I feel like we've done this panel for, I think, over 3 years, which is crazy. And I feel like it's kind of intimidating to like see very cool people doing very cool things. And I always like to talk about how many of us are actually trained in the things that we're doing because I am not at all. I went to school to be an elementary school teacher, which I didn't do for even one day or minute. And now I'm doing fashion and run a magazine. So if you guys in the same order want to go through and say if you have professional training in what you do, because we have a pretty good mix here.
I don't have any professional training. I have like on the job experience. And, you know, all of my careers in one way have worked in marketing. And then I actually got into, I started working with comic book artists through merchandising and manufacturing. I used to run a company called Bombsheller, and we made leggings with a lot of comic book artists. And so from that and just kind of getting together with them and kind of blending the two brands and figuring out how to market, you know, a complete line of leggings for a comic book. And then after I got laid off from there, I was, you know, people were just kind of coming to me and asking for advice. And I was just kind of like, you know, helping friends with their marketing. And so I had a meeting with Lauren Sankovic. And when you get laid off, everyone's always like, what are you going to do next? And she asked me that. And I said, I don't know. What do you think I should do next? And she was like, honestly, I think you should market comic books and work for yourself because you're really good at it. And so here I am.
That's
cool.
Awesome.
I do have like I have a BFA in theater, but that was very focused on like a generalist degree, and the plan was to be an actor, like so many people, and I just writing was not part of the plan, and then I just sort of fell into that actually through I was performing in a late night series of plays, and I kind of saw the opportunity to use it's like 15-minute things. It was a competition. You would perform 5 of them. 5 of them would get performed in a night, and then 3 would get voted back to come the next week to like continue their plot, like a serialized thing. And I kind of saw that as an opportunity to really fill that with like genre pieces or very like nerdy sci-fi fantasy stuff. And so I wrote a fantasy play, and then I sort of fell into writing geek things. From there, my first full-length play, Kapow-i GoGo, which was a big epic like Saturday morning cartoon anime thing, originated there. And then through that, I became a writer, and eventually Puffs came. So I don't have a formal writing training at all. I took one class, and so that I've just kind of figured out as I went.
Yeah, Robyn, you have training. You
Yeah.
need it also.
Yes, but I think it's actually sort of similar to Matt's, where I have training in like the content, but it wasn't necessarily meant for what I'm doing now. So I have a bachelor's in physical education and a master's in health education. I was a New York City public school teacher for 5 years in both PE and health, as well as dance too. And then I burnt out and started feeling it like a lot of young professional teachers do around the 5-year mark. So I started trying to seek out other ways of doing the work that I really cared about. Outside of the public school format. So I actually started Geek Girl Strong while still a public school teacher and was just bartering services to see if it would work after a lot of women had said to me that they felt really comfortable talking to me about health and wellness because it would come up due to me being a PE teacher and everyone in the geek community hating PE as kids. Not everyone, a lot of people. Then I was a family planning health educator for a nonprofit health center in New York City for a year and a half. I tried to leave and they asked me to stay on part-time after coming back from a vacation. I was like, I'm done. And they said, well, if you could just stay part-time. So I got to do Geek Girl Strong and that part-time for about 6 months before going full-time with Geek Girl Strong 2 years ago, last April, which is really weird to think about. I have lots in physical activity and health education. I'm also a certified health coach and an accredited pole dancing instructor, but I have absolutely no experience in running a business. Or like, I guess, formal education. I now have experience. I don't have any formal education in business.
Wow, same.
None of us have that.
No, that's the funniest part about ending up where I think we're all at is, I don't think I know anyone I know very few people who went for like an MBA or anything like that. So I went to school actually for psychology and anthropology and then for higher education. So higher education student affairs, which is basically all of the stuff that's outside of the classroom at a college or university. And kind of burned out. And I think my experience mostly comes from growing up at cons because my dad actually runs a small business. So I did get, I had maybe a little bit more formalized training in that I was working booths from when I was like 10 years old. But past that, the ins and outs of small businesses, especially on the internet and social media and all of that, no real, never taken a class on any of it. And so, so that's where we're at.
Yeah, so anyone watching or listening who feels like they aren't qualified for the thing they want to do, I like starting the panel with that because you don't necessarily need the training that you think you do. And so this panel is mostly about networking and community building, and I picked you all because I like you, I think you're great people, but also because you all really lean into your communities and networks in a way that I think is really great. We can go in the same order or not, it doesn't matter, but
I would like to not be first.
Okay, so not in the same order. But I feel very like community has always been really important to me, and I probably everyone watching will have that too. But I think it's cool. It's cool to start with a question about like how valuable that has been to you, or like the ways that it has been valuable to you, or like how that has been something that's been like important to you being able to get where you are today. Anyone but Jazzlyn can go first.
So I always like to point out that Geek Girl Strong the intention wasn't to be a wellness community. The community took it and made it that, which one took a lot of pressure off of me to perform and like to be the one kind of thing, but also made it so that it was an example of what I believed in. So of addressing a person's health in a whole sense. A lot of people have heard the term holistic at this point, meaning addressing every facet of your health. So not just exercising, not just what you're eating, but also your mental and emotional health, which has a lot to do with the people that you surround yourself with. So community has been absolutely everything in Geek Girl Strong, and I send out an annual survey to kind of keep a tabs on what everyone's enjoying or maybe wanting in the community. And I always ask, do you come to events for like seeing your friends, networking, getting a good workout, or something else? And I always think it's going to be 50-50. Like I really enjoy these workouts and I also really enjoy seeing my friends. And it's always 100% I want to see my friends. No one cares about my workouts. No one cares.
I mean, they're good too, but yeah, totally.
The bonus. The workout is the bonus.
Yeah.
Yes. The first thing everyone wants to do is be around people who are like-minded and safe. And that makes a really big difference when working with people on such sensitive topics like their bodies.
Yeah, in the entertainment space, that was one of the big things with my little group of theater makers and whatnot. Sought to do a little differently, just because within this world there's so many people trying to do it, and there's so many different options out there for people to engage with and watch. So our sort of avenue in, since we were working within fandom spaces in theater, which is not a very super common thing, there are a lot of different works out there that do that. One of our biggest goals with it was that we would build some sort of sense of community, or we would engage a lot more with the fans that we generated, because that is also very much not a common thing in theater necessarily, is to have fans of you're seeing it, unless you're like really up in the upper echelons of things, or like our musical makers. So that was one. So whenever we started doing pops and we started seeing that a lot of people were coming and seeing the show multiple times, we really sort of latched onto that and started really catering towards those people by doing fan events. And we added a bunch of different like readings of sequels and prequels to give those people something exciting, and to thank them, one, for liking it and talking about it, and also giving a reason for them to keep coming back and starting to see familiar faces amongst each other. And then those people, and slowly that circle grows and grows and grows. And then that was just like the dream of having, an army of people who like your stuff. And that was, I don't know, that's what we've kind of found is what has made our work be able to stand out a little bit more, is by engaging people and constantly giving them reasons to continue to support
and
you. And
you have cosplayers for your play, which is wild. We saw
really
one at
cool.
San Diego last year, actually.
Yeah, we ran into one at a bar.
Yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
that's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's the dream. That's the dream come true. And then over the last like few months, with quarantine and all that, that's sort of, we figured out how to bridge that off, and we've been doing a lot more like YouTube stuff, and we've been able to sort of grow that community where our little fan events used to be only available to people who lived in New York, and we're able to be like, oh, that's happening in 3 days, I'll go. Now we've been able to open them up to more people, which has been really exciting.
Cool.
But yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. I think for us, so we sort of cover like two different brands. So FanMail started as like a subscription box, and has definitely moved away from that into more limited edition mystery boxes. And a lot of our subscriber base was word of mouth, which was really cool to see. And word of mouth, not just from my friends back in 2015. And then our most recent project is actually a licensed quarterly subscription through CBS for Charmed, like the classic television show. And that has brought its own community with it, which has been really cool and interesting to see, because they haven't had like necessarily like a spot to kind of gather around. Like there are Facebook groups and we're very active in those, but it's been cool to see as we create merchandise for a thing that doesn't have a ton of merchandise 20 years out, to see how people come together and discuss and give us ideas and sort of open up that dialogue. And it's been really cool to get some very like personal messages from people too about how that fandom has really impacted them, and sort of like being able to be the conduit to then like be like, well, there are other people who are also feeling the same things.
Yeah.
It must be so exciting to not have anything and then have something to
Yes.
to show
Yeah.
that
It's
you
like,
like something.
it's the dream.
Yeah.
It's the dream for many of my fandoms as well. So
Totally.
I think for me, I mean, community is like everything. I can't imagine doing this job or any job without the community. For a personal reason, it's like I rely on my community to support me in the hard times, especially like now with quarantine and everything that's going on. Like, I've really had to lean into them and, all of us together to support each other. And then in terms of like marketing comics, like comics themselves are such a collaborative medium, like within the team. And it's like everybody, the writer, the artist, the inker, the letterer, like the editor, everybody, it's such a collaboration, and that's its own tiny community. And then the fans that read it like monthly and then, wait for the trades, like it's a long standing community that you take with you. And the fans actually have quite a bit of say, not in how the story goes, but in, how if there's like a branch off of a book, or if there's merchandise, or like it's a big IP, say. So to me, that community, and like when you're trying to market a comic book, you want to, it's like this difficult relationship, only in the sense that like you want to honor it and you want to honor the time that these people have put into it, and you want to just like highlight the best parts of it. And I think like that's why I love comic books so much, specifically because of all the little micro communities.
Yeah. Yeah, some of you have mentioned this already, but I wanted to ask how this part of it, how the networking community aspect of your lives and brands and businesses have changed over this time of being stuck only online and not in person. I was actually going to start maybe with Matt, because I know you have a very obvious way, and I know Robyn has a lot of that too, but sorry, did I freeze?
You did. You froze a little
just
bit.
Say that last part again.
Yeah, I think if you just go back. Yeah.
Cool. So maybe Matt, if you would start, because I know that your theater situation has gotten a little funky with no ability to be in front of people.
In that an industry stopped existing and won't exist until probably next year, at the earliest. Yeah. So we looked down, that, and was like, oh, we are obsolete right now, and all my friends who I make stuff with don't have really anything to do. So we kind of immediately jumped on after the few weeks of sitting there being like twiddling thumbs, being like, well, this is life now. We started streaming on YouTube. I look to, I'm a fan of video games and whatnot, so I'm familiar with streaming culture. I've never really watched a lot of it, but I've seen some things here and there. So I kind of took all of those lessons and tried to bring that into putting plays or readings of things online, which there's a lot of people doing, and it's very tricky to make engaging. So using those lessons from people who've been doing this on YouTube and whatnot for years and make a living out of it, I kind of tried to take some of that energy. And we've been somewhat successful, at least I think so. I hope so. Probably.
It's fun. I love it.
Yeah, good. And putting things out there so that more people can see them, which has turned into great, because it says we have gained more people who would never even have watched our things just because they've seen the movie version of Puffs, but now they've come and watched the first episode we did of Kapow-i GoGo. And I don't know, it's been fascinating, and what's been great is just it's been also learning new skills throughout it, which I think is, if anything, even if we haven't like changed the world within ourselves, we all have come out knowing some other things. But yeah, no, it's been really interesting but fun to at least have more people out there to get to see stuff, I guess. And we gave ourselves something to do, and I guess that's all that really mattered, isn't it?
Yeah. And Robyn, you have a very different industry, but very similar situation.
Yeah. So as someone who was doing most of my work one-on-one with people in person, and then kind of the other part of it was doing events that were about 20 people, working out, breathing heavily, probably droplets flying everywhere in a room. That's not happening anymore, and it's probably not happening for a while. Like, even when everyone says we're allowed to, it's probably still not happening right away because I know too much. So I've had to take my work, and in an industry that I personally, like, ethically and just generally feel is better in person. I think it takes a really specific coach or trainer and very specific client to do everything online all the time and not have it like the ability to give feedback in 3D. Asking a client, can you turn a quarter to the left and then do that again, doing it this way so I can see it on the other side. Kind of what Matt said, I have a lot of new skills. I have a lot of new methods of teaching. There are a lot of things I notice about my teaching that have gotten better because I've had to learn how to do it verbally and learn how to be a little, I guess, more patient with someone learning a skill because they're so far away.
You can't just like put their body where it needs to be.
I can't just walk up to them and poke at a muscle and be like, you should feel it here.
Right.
I have to learn new descriptive words for the body, or maybe terms I knew, but using them differently or more often. I was streaming workouts on different conventions' social media platforms.
Yeah.
So that was the first time that I was leading a workout with no feedback. And as someone who is a teacher and then in-person instructor, I really feed off of the room. I like to use humor. I like to make people comfortable by joking around a little bit. And when no one's laughing, and I'm sure Matt can relate to that, you like say a joke and you're like, I don't know if you're there or not.
It's
Hopefully
weird.
you like that one.
Yeah, totally.
It takes a lot of getting. You just have to trust yourself.
And there were times where I would just look into the camera and be like, I'm just going to assume that you're laughing because there's nothing else for me to do right now. So I don't know what you want me to do. We're going to move on now. So, you know, all of that has pushed me to figuring out how to be a part as a business in a very different way. And luckily, you know, I would have been having in-person walks around the city this time of year when it's warmer. And I've had to translate that into a virtual dance party, which both Jordan and Jazzlyn actually work on with me and have been a great help. So just a quick shout out. And that has allowed for people not only all over the country who can come to things unless I was traveling to them, be involved, but people all over the world have been able to be more active in our community. So like Matt was saying, again, the Geek Girl Strong community has actually grown a lot during this time, just outside of who could physically be with us previously. But it's hard. And everything takes longer than it should. Every single thing that you try takes like an hour longer because every day there's something new happening, which is really tough.
Yeah. Man, like it's all so different. And the one thing that's good about it is I feel like everyone's giving each other a lot of grace. And there's this thing that I keep calling anarchy intimacy, where everyone's just like thrown into this, thrown into this rough situation, we'll call it. And like, I don't know, I just feel like everyone's kind of relaxing a little bit. So like, you'll see people's partners in the background or like their animals or whatever. And it's like not weird. You don't have to apologize. Like, sorry, I live in a 1-bedroom with my partner and we're both trying to Zoom for work, right? You know, like there's, so I feel like everyone's giving each other a lot of grace, which is great. And then also like, I've had to just like, you know, my job before this was like, part of it was like planning book tours for artists. And now all of those are virtual. And like one of my clients, I've had to replan their book tour because, you know, it's like 5 times because it was like, oh, it's gonna get better, oh, it's gonna get better, oh, it's not, okay, now it's online, okay, now it's moved. And so it's like, it's just like,
and publishing dates are moving too.
Publishing has been a ride. And so I'm just like practicing, you know, the like take it one day at a time, like work on what I can, let go of what I can't. Like if the publishing date gets moved again, like what am I gonna do, get mad at the publisher? I can't. Like, you know, people can't be in the factory binding these books. There will be a few of them at a time. So it's like, there's no one to be mad at, you know? So just roll with the punches. And so in a way, I'm kind of thankful, not thankful that this happened, but I'm thankful for the things that I personally am learning and the things that I'm noticing that my, like, you know, colleagues are learning.
Rose, I know your business has mostly been online and I know conventions were a big part of it. Is there anything like specific that you feel like you've had to shift?
We ran into the biggest delay that we've ever had.
Right. Shipping.
So we ship because we're a totally online company, have been from the beginning, no brick and mortar, right? If you're going to buy stuff from me in person, it's going to be at a convention, which will not happen in 2020. We will not be at anything, you know, and so that was tough. And you and I worked together because you have more of that social media side of things to try to figure out what could we do to still keep people engaged, you know, and really be communicative and transparent. And like, I think, you know, Jazzlyn, what you're saying about people having a lot of grace, the nice part was that there was frustration, but it was never at me. And if anything, I think I was probably more frustrated than the people that I was trying to get stuff to, you know? And so, so we typically ship on a pretty consistent schedule, January, April, July, and October. And we shipped our April boxes last week. So yeah, so that's been a shift and a change in just sort of how we operate, but it was really helpful just to talk through it with people and say, you know, like we're willing to be as flexible as we can be as a small business in terms of refunds and exchanges and goodwill and all of that stuff, but I don't think I had a single return or a request for a refund because everybody was just like, yep, we're all on board, you know, and it'll be nice to get it when we get it, and that'll be that. And so it's been a weird coming together in a moment where, you know, we're pretty timely and then we suddenly couldn't be. And so the stress of that, I think, would have felt a lot different if people were reacting in a different way or our community was saying things.
We obviously can't have an audience Q&A today because there is not a live audience. But I did post on Instagram to see if anyone had any questions, and this one I thought was great. The question is from Rachel Leah: how do you break into already formed groups without feeling like you're intruding? And I feel like that's like a version of that question gets asked a lot, of like, you see a cool group either like in your network or just in Comic-Cons or, you know, nerd people, I'm assuming is probably who's listening. And like, how do you introduce yourself or like get a foot in without being creepy or intrusive or any number of things that we're all very anxious about?
You mean the goal isn't just to hang out next to Jordan's booth until she talks to you?
You can, and I sure will.
That's not really my tip, but you know, yeah, I think that's an interesting one. I think a lot of it is it has to really feel genuine. That's like my biggest thing, is it really has to be that you appreciate something about this person, and the goal isn't to be in the in-group necessarily, because often that's like a very nebulous term, a weird term, you know, and something that can look a certain way on the internet and be very different in person, or vice versa, and all of that good stuff. And so I think as long as you're looking to make genuine connections, you know, it's always worth. My biggest tip for when conventions exist is to like go and if they're at something, if they're at a panel, if they're at a little signing, if they're at, you know, even most people will be okay with being approached on the con floor, you know. So, you know, like just make it a genuine moment and to be like, hey, and like sometimes if I've met a person a couple of times, I'll tell them that we've met a couple of times and I reintroduce myself about 15 times. I assume that no one remembers who I am. Even if they do, and even if they're like, of course I remember you, I'm like, cool, but you never know. Like I'm just
Right,
I'm just a person. So yeah, so I do a lot of that, and I think that, you know, sometimes that leads to great things, and sometimes that leads to at least, you know, a facial recognition from a cool person who is a work I appreciate, and that's probably as far as it's gonna go. But yeah, it feels weird to say like set your expectations like not low, but you know.
I mean, I think that's fair to say, like, don't expect you can go up to every celebrity at a con and like be their best friend at the end.
Yeah.
So that,
I mean,
I
I
think
wish.
is good advice, right?
Like, don't make it the end all be all of your life.
Right.
If this person accepts you. And to that too, I think it's the other thing I think is important, especially in like a more formal setting, is that at least whoever you're going up to or you're talking to have at least a genuine good idea of why you would like and appreciate their thing and what it is that you engage with it, because I think that's what creates the conversation, and that what creates the, like, having a good structured idea of what you want from the person is also very good.
Yes, that is very good advice.
Yeah, I think so like when we are allowed to see each other again, being like vulnerable and honest when you meet somebody, you know, like always works out for me. Being like, oh, I really like Matt, I really like the Puffs play, and it was really cool to have like Hufflepuff celebrated for once, and you know, yada yada yada. But then, I don't know, being honest about how like I haven't seen it in person because I don't live in New York, but I did watch it on Playbill. You know, like, and congratulations, that was really cool. Like, you know,
that would be great. I would love to hear all that.
We're watching it
live.
That's
done, kids.
Yeah, and I think in the virtual space, similarly, like, you know, shout them out. I love a good tag. I love a good tag.
It means so much. I've been getting a lot of shout outs lately with people trying to put more Black-owned businesses at the forefront right now. And it would be great if that could just happen all the time, right? If that could be normalized.
Continue on.
But every single person who does it, it genuinely makes my day. If you just say, I've gotten messages where people just simply say, the way that you approach your work has changed A, B, and C for me in like my own wellness journey, means so much to me. And I've told people that it is incredibly motivating. I think a really good thing to remember when you're trying to enter some sort of group is that they're all human. So, you know, one, they could be having a really good day and they hear your comment or you trying to enter and they're like, this is awesome, thank you so much. They could be having a not so great day. So kind of like what Jazzlyn was saying, give them some grace. I had someone who was surprised that I got back to them after a week and I was like, oh, I just wanted to give my response to your nice message the time and like attention that it deserved. I didn't want to just write you off. And then also remember that sometimes the people that you're a fan of from far away are going to disappoint you in person. So I think that's sort of what everyone was kind of touching on, which is like to go in with realistic expectations, that sometimes a friend group seems really great from far away and then you meet them at a convention and you're like, oh no, I don't know if I want to be a part of this group anymore.
I'm just gonna see myself out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that what's helped me a lot as someone who doesn't do so well with small talk is to find people that you can have deeper conversations with and allow for that to lead to other things down the road. Because Jordan is so good at small talk and talking about, isn't the weather nice, and all sorts of other things. And I like black out when conversations start. And I try so hard. But right along with what everyone said, if you have an idea of what someone's work has meant to you when you're going up to them, that helps make it like a not as surface level conversation, which will also make it more memorable probably for yourself and the person that you're talking to.
Yeah, it's like good for both of you, which I think is that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
That they like talking to you too.
But get better at the small talk too. I'm not saying that. You need both.
Yeah, totally.
You need all of
Soft
it.
skills.
I'm learning.
You're doing great.
Thank you.
I didn't realize this before, but I think everyone on this panel has actually done this. So we're talking now about like how to break into another group or community, but actually I think everyone here has built their own at some point too. Like most of what you all do either doesn't widely exist or didn't exist in the way that you exactly wanted it to, and so you just made the thing that you wanted. And I think one, that's very impressive, so thank you all for doing that. And two, I think that's an important takeaway too, that like sometimes you're looking for a specific thing, especially in fandom, and it doesn't exist yet. So I don't know what the question is. Maybe something along the lines of like, you know, what was it like to realize that the group that you wanted to be in didn't exist yet, so you had to make it? Or like what made you actually do it? Or like, I don't know. I don't have a good question. I just want to talk about that for a second. And also like say that it's very cool that you've all done that. It's awesome.
I think it's
and I'm in all of them and I love them all so much. So
wow, Jordan, we can be friends if you want.
Is that what this is?
Me trying to make you all my best friends.
Is there even a panel?
Am I doing a good job? Yeah.
Did San Diego even actually
so
tell
lonely.
you that this existed, or is this just a video chat?
There you go. There's your way in. Fake a San Diego Comic-Con panel. Invite the people that you want to work with. Butter them up.
Record
Best
it for your
advice.
own
Yeah.
So the question is like, what is it like to build a community, or what is it like?
I guess so. Like Matt, you talked about like doing nerdy theater, and like that exists kind of, but like the group that you have doing the types of plays you have, you know, didn't. That's not a common thing. You could just join another like nerdy theater group.
At the time, there was only one. There was the Vampire Cowboy Theater Company in New York, but they had kind of slowed down doing a lot of stuff in New York around the time that I started living in New York. So it was like, oh, well, I missed that boat. So it was kind of like, well, especially after seeing countless other plays and a few ones that did try to like exist within genre space, and then that slow, just like sinking feeling of like, I just feel like I could do this as well or possibly better. And then it was really just kind of like looking around, and chances are, if you're, a person who has people around you who are your friends, like there's a good chance that those people will like this kind of same things that you do. And if they are within the same field as you, that's when you just kind of slowly start pulling in as many people who have those same goals and instincts and likes, and then slowly you've made a thing. And that's kind of how all of the things that we've made have come together. It's just like, oh, you're good at like designing props and costumes and things. Like, great, come and make this. It's I don't know. It's slowly building and building and building. Yeah, with just your friends, and then slowly, and once you have enough of that, it can grow outward to other strangers because those people now want to be your friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that for me, it got started because of Geek Girl Brunch and the people there expressing that they would like a safe space for movement in particular, and then also just to kind of talk about their bodies and all of those other things. So I didn't first have the idea to make it as big as it has been, but because of kind of what Matt was saying, you start with people that you know and who trust you and are kind of willing to go along for the ride with you. And then those people tell other people that you're trustworthy, or what you're doing is trustworthy or honorable, or however you'd like to look at it. And then it kind of grows from there. And it's not that I invented geeky fitness or anything like that. Some of my friends who are not in kind of the convention circuit think that I did. It's kind of like one of those memes, like what my mom thinks I do, what I actually do. Kind of things. But I did see that a lot of the kind of nerd or geek focused fitness stuff in particular were all white guys in California. And I was a Black woman in Brooklyn, New York. So there was definitely, I think, the fact that I was one of the first faces that people see doing it, that looks the way that I do and has the identities that I do, made a really big difference in people coming along into a space that they felt safe in and trusted in.
And I didn't think of it that way, but that's a really cool thing where it was essentially like a branch off of something else that already existed with like a more specific idea. It's really cool.
Yeah. I've said it on a lot of these panels, so I don't even know if I should say it anymore, but the reason why I started it was because a lot of the people at Geek Girl Brunch actually said to me that if I were their PE teacher, they might have not hated it so much. And that's really what motivated me to start Geek Girl Strong and to give people that space for movement and for health.
Sweet.
I don't know how to say this without sounding like a jerk, but I'm a very indignant person. I'm very fed up with a lot of how the world works and a lot of the voices that get the opportunity to tell stories and get the opportunity to tell other people's stories. And so I take that anger at how pop culture and how the art world works, and I use that to try to create systems that'll elevate other voices. So that's I'll just let you four and whoever's watching know that like my long con is to make comics more accessible and get more diverse voices into comics and get more people reading comics, because I think it's one of the most beautiful ways to tell a story or to tell your personal, like your point of view. And so I think that more people should be allowed to tell their story or, tell a story that's close to them. And so to me, part of the, there's like just a few white guys who really get a marketing budget behind their books. And to have a marketing budget behind your book means that more people get to hear about it, which means more people read it. So to me, like one of the ways to get more voices heard is to better market their books. And I have to be very scrappy because my clients that I'm working with don't have the budget that some of the larger voices do. So we have to be very scrappy, and that's where community comes in, right? And that's where like my strengths as somebody who grew up in the intersections that I grew up in, and the like poor, essentially, right? Like, very poor, and learning how to like squeeze a nickel till it bleeds, and like do what you can with the whatever you were allotted, you know. So yeah, that's the using anger at how this world is set up to try to change it as when you get to a good place, trying to use just like your love for yourself and your communities and these other voices as the fuel, so that you're not just like burning anger. But it's a good fuel at the beginning.
For a while.
Yeah, it does. It's a really good fuel, but you know, so is love.
I have nothing to add.
Cool.
I'm good.
Yeah, I think that is very, I really appreciate about all of you that you've taken the passions that you have and made, you know, basically using those to fuel the changes that you want to see in the world, instead of, it's a lot easier to like wait for someone else to do it so that you can hop in to like the easy path. And then if you do that, and I think that's incredible. I think
I'm
we're
not
also
patient enough for
that.
Yeah.
But that's great, because you know,
Yes.
who knows how long it'll take, or if it'll ever happen. Like sometimes you just have to be the person that does the thing you want to exist. I think that's actually our time. It's so weird to not have like the time signs in the back. But if you all want to share, I guess, where we can find you online, since that's how we're doing this these days. Let's Jazzlyn, do you want to start? We'll go in alphabetical order again.
Yeah. So again, Jazzlyn Stone. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jazzlyn Stone, or my website is jazzlynstone.com.
Very nice.
Matt Cox. My website is mattcoxland.com. And you can follow Puff's Play or at Kapow-i GoGo, which is the next project I'm working on. Or go to YouTube, the Ultra Corporation channel, which is where we're putting up our online content of various things. And we'll have some other fun, live, interactive events happening soon as well, which I think are going to be fun. Yeah.
I am at Geek Girl Strong everywhere, but I mostly use Instagram. You can find more information at geekgirlstrong.com, and feel free to join us on patreon.com/geekgirlstrong, because I'm trying to be better about remembering that exists.
Promote all the things.
Should join us.
Yeah.
FanMail is at FanMailbox, like MAIL, like mail you get in your mailbox. So FanMailbox. We have hopefully some projects coming up in the fall that have been a long time coming, that have been put on pause because of a global pandemic or whatever. And then Charmed is at the Box of Shadows, and that's actually theboxofshadows.com everywhere. And come find us. Come jam. We don't jam on instruments or anything. We just jam on the internet. It's fine.
And I'm at Jordan Dené NYC, or at Sartorial Geek. And thank you guys so much for doing this. This was so great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, internet world.